Well, in the wake of the school shooting in Florida, many are looking to other countries for gun control solutions. But those solutions maybe are not as accurate as they seem. There have been many claims, for example, that Israel eliminated the problem of mass shootings by posting armed guards at schools. Others looking to Australia's gun buyback program as proof that fewer guns are the answer. And in both cases, the truth, it's a little bit more complicated. So here to help separate myth from reality is Associate Professor of Sociology at the University of Toronto, Jooyoung. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I want to throw up a tweet right now, and this is from Governor Mike Huckabee. And he says that Israel eliminated the problem of school shootings by placing highly trained people in strategic spots. So, first of all, give us a sense, what is Israel's gun laws? What do they look like? And is there any truth to Huckabee's claim here, that that's all that you need?
Right. So if I'm hearing Mike Huckabee correctly, he's sort of suggesting that the Department of Justice and Jeff Sessions should take white supremacist groups more seriously as a threat to American safety, which is a complete about-face from how the Trump administration has approached white supremacist groups, because now we know that the shooter had alleged ties to a white supremacist group in Florida. But the bigger problem with Mike Huckabee's statement is that he's comparing apples and oranges. Israel's gun laws are much different than the U.S. They're very different contexts. They have very different histories. One of the big differences is that in Israel, you have to demonstrate a real need to have a firearm, and you have to go through vigorous mental tests, physical tests to determine your fitness to own a gun. In the U.S., you don't have any of that. In many states, you can walk into a store, submit your application to the federal background check system, and as long as you don't have a convicted felony on your record or you haven't been hospitalized against your will for a mental illness, you pass and you get a gun. And indeed, this is what we see time and time again, that the background check system simply doesn't capture and flag people who shouldn't be owning guns.
Wow.
So his comment sort of blurs some of the legal nuance between contexts.
Let's move to the UK now. Also, some of the lowest rates of gun-related homicide in the entire world. They also have some of the strictest gun laws as well. So firearm offenses dropped by more than half. That was from 2003 to 2015. How did they get there?
So after the Dunblane massacre in the 90s, people in the UK petitioned. In the Dunblane massacre, there were a bunch of school children who were killed by a lone deranged gunman. People in the UK gathered 750,000 signatures, and they petitioned the government to enforce very sensible gun laws to prohibit people from owning handguns and to really restrict people's abilities to do these kinds of things. And what we saw, as you alluded to, was a drop in gun crimes in the aftermath.
Let's talk about Canada now, because you actually say that we do a pretty good job here of regulating gun ownership. So guns in Canada, they are divided into three different groups. So there are non-restricted, restricted, and prohibited. Why, in your opinion, is this model effective here?
It's a great model, not only because they sort of distinguish which kinds of firearms people can own, and some of the prohibited firearms are like small concealable guns that are actually used in many more shootings, both fatal and non-fatal, than the long barrel semi-automatic assault rifles. But Canada does a great job, I think, because they also require a safety training course. Canadians treat owning a gun as a very big responsibility, not as a right like Americans do. And so there's this training course. There's a 30-day waiting period where the RCMP has time to figure out if you're, again, fit to own a gun. You have to renew this license every 5 years. They also limit the magazine size, so Canadians can also own guns that are very similar to the AR-15, but instead of having a 30-round magazine, which we see in the US and in the Florida shooting, the magazine size in Canada is limited to 5 rounds. And that has a big impact because during mass shootings, it gives people a time to escape. It makes it easier for law enforcement to intervene. When you have 30 rounds that you're able to fire repeatedly into a crowd, it makes it very difficult for people to escape. And there's not that lag time that allows people to sort of get away.
We hope that lawmakers are listening, perhaps for the first time, for sure. Thank you so much for this amazing insight and for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.